Welcome to Chapter a Day. We're reading Here If You Need Me, written by Kate Braestrup, Unitarian Universalist chaplain for the Maine Game Wardens. We're on to Chapter 13. I'm not really religious, Warden Hannah Robitaille told me, but I did pray once. Ah, I said encouragingly, settling in for a story. I was on my way to one of the remote warden camps by Clayton Lake. The easiest way to get there is to drive as far as you can, then put your canoe into the water or your snowmobile onto the ice and go directly across the lake to the camp on the far shore. It was January and probably about -2, so I brought my snowmobile. I had all my supplies, tools I needed to do some repairs at the camp, all my food for a couple of days. I got maybe 2/3 of the way across that lake. We're talking 8 miles, 10, and the engine just dies, honks out. Hannah paused to sip her coffee and allow the ominous implications of this narrative turn to sink in. That's not good, I prodded her. Not good at all. It was really, really cold. Dark night, snowing. I farted around for a little while, checking the spark plugs, twiddling some wires, but I couldn't do much with my mittens on, and if I took them off, my hands would freeze. So I think, okay, screw this, I'm just gonna walk. I put on all my extra clothes, get as much stuff as I can into my pack, check my direction on the compass so I'll be able to stay on course and find the camp. Because now it's snowing so friggin' hard, I can't see anything more than 20 feet away. I start walking. I figured out later it must have been 4 or 5 miles. With the wind howling and the snow blowing so hard, it's packing behind my glasses and I have to dig the snow out of my eye sockets to take a compass reading. The nearest person, forget the nearest game warden, the nearest human being is like 40 miles away. That was when you prayed, I'd guess? Yeah, but the thing is, Kate, I wasn't afraid. I wasn't praying for help or anything. I was thankful. I was thinking, God, this is great. I'm getting paid for this. You're nuts, I told her, laughing. Not that I wasn't glad to see the camp, Hannah said thoughtfully. And I was glad to get home to my hubby, too. Of course. But it was great, she said. It really was. Like wolves and deer, human beings are social beings. We don't function well without companions, and a person can literally die of loneliness. Still, most of us have at least some need for solitude. Like the desert fathers of early Christianity, like Jesus and Buddha and Muhammad, some of us, at least, will actively seek isolation in the loneliest of landscapes, in the wild place beyond the Jordan where the crowds cannot find us. A forest ranger from Acadia National Park told me about a new and irritating form of vandalism. People pick up rocks and make piles and patterns out of them. Rock graffiti, it has been called, and these creations confuse hikers who are usually guided by the park's own official rock cairns. But as this ranger put it, they also destroy the integrity of the natural landscape. Rocks arranged by a human being in the shape of a peace sign are not the same as rocks scattered naturally by a glacier, even if the rocks are identical and have only been moved a few feet in one direction or another. On one level, of course, I agree with the ranger. The rock graffiti artists ought to knock it off. Organisms living under stones deserve to live their tiny lives undisturbed. And besides, when I go into the wilderness, I want it to look like wilderness. I want the illusion that I am going where no one else has gone before. Still, it's sort of touching the way human beings go off into the wilderness to be alone and then can't resist communicating with anyone who might come along afterward. Are you here? I was here too. Peace, dude. Every year, someone who goes off into the wilderness realizes, one way or another, that he can't find his way out. Communion with the natural world changes its flavor when it becomes involuntary and apparently interminable. In such situations, the human ear attunes itself acutely to sounds that might indicate the suddenly welcome presence of people, engines, voices, the cheerful bark of a domesticated dog. Then it would be great to find a rock peace sign, or better still, a nice camp with a fireplace and a telephone. I'll never go out there again, they promise, when the wardens finally find them and bring them home. Hannah told me that the time she spent walking through the blizzard on the lake, miles from anywhere, was the most joyous time of her whole life, yet she was pleased when it ended. There it is, another spiritual paradox. Human beings want to live in community, and so we want ours to be an intimate universe presided over by a Father God who cares for us and whose universe is responsive to us. At the same time, we are drawn out of community and physically experience a harsh and lonely cosmos in whose vastness stars are born and explode, and solar systems come into being and fall apart. Closer to home, continents swim around like bits of eggshell on the molten yolk of our planet, banging into one another, squashing the Earth's crust into mountains that promptly erode into the sea. It is a universe in which our soft bodies can be fried or frozen, parched or drowned or dashed against a stone. Seekers of truth, when confronted by such cosmic indifference, can find it both frightening and liberating. Like the game wardens, I understand what draws New Age hikers, Enlightenment hunters, and even the deeply depressed out beyond the comfortable edge of the human-centered world, out to where moose, woodcock, grouse, and mink live without reference to the human, out to where a person does not matter at all. The air will be as warm or as cold, as dry or as damp, as the indifferent physics of front meeting front demands. Pray or don't pray. Ask and ye shall receive what you would have received without asking. Succor that comes in time or doesn't. Chipmunks scooted past as Betsy, the young suicidal mother, staggered and fell into the yellow leaves to sleep away the remaining minutes of her life. Chickadees peeped and chattered companionably to one another in the trees as Eddie Seavey tore his clothing from his body and exposed his naked skin to icy air that felt to him in its indifference and lethality like fire. No human help for miles and miles, the air thick with snow and impossible to see through. It was hard to breathe. Standing on the frozen surface of Clayton Lake, a lone game warden, unobserved, exalted. I am sympathetic. I too want wildness, the existential freedom, the release and exaltation of being in and of a world in which humanity is only one dimension of the whole. But then I want it to end. If I am lost, I want the wardens to come find me. And if I am dead, I want someone to pray for me, even if my head has become a tempting toy for bears, my flesh a welcome resource for creatures fattening up for the winter. The chickadees don't have to pray. The bears can have their ball. But if a member of my species should happen to find me, or merely a sign I've left behind, a bent twig, a pile of stones, words, perhaps they will be so kind as to say a prayer and cry a little on the way home from the search. That is the end of chapter 13.